Hello, once again I'm Cosmic, and today we're going to be giving an early access examination of Mordheim City of the Damned. Mordheim is being developed by Rogue Factor, which is a Montreal-based indie studio set up in 2013. The game is the first video game adaptation of Game Workshop's classic tabletop game Mordheim. It is a tactical turn-based strategy game with RPG elements that is set essentially in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. The game is also being published by Focus Home Interactive, which at least raised me the question why it needed to be on early access when Focus could fund it totally themselves. So before we get into the game, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the setting without going into hours of Warhammer lore. Essentially, a comet struck the Empire city of Mordheim, destroying it and scattering warp stones across the ruined city. These warp stones essentially hold really a lot of power, and they are very highly prized, and as such they are the reason for warbands of all races risking the horrors and dangers of the city. So I have to say that I'm usually quite cynical in general of Games Workshop licensed games currently. Games Workshop used to be very strict and careful with their IPs until recently, where they essentially opened the metaphorical floodgates, allowing developers left, right and centre to use them. As a result, fans of Games Workshop IPs have tended to receive a ton of bad games, and I say a ton of bad games, there's been about 5 in the past year alone. So going into anything with Games Workshop slapped on the front gives me worries from the get-go. Now let's talk about the current content in the early access version. As I'm recording this, the game has just entered Phase 2, which released a new warband, being the Sisters of Sigmar, giving a total of 3 playable factions including humans and Skaven. They also introduced the hideout section, which now allows you to change the equipment of your warband in a very limited way currently. Phase 2 also had a number of balance changes, however please bear in mind that the game is and will no doubt remain to be unbalanced for quite some time. Warbands are made up from a variety of units. These include a leader unit, hero unit, novice unit and an impressive unit. Currently in the early access build, you cannot change your warband's roster. Each unit has 2 weapon sets that you can customize, as well as having access to light armor, heavy armor and clothing. Each item you equip will have an effect on that unit's stats, sometimes in both positive and negative ways. For example, equipping a 2-handed great hammer will give you more damage and more armor penetration, but it gives a plus percentage chance for the enemy to dodge, as it's a slow and heavy weapon. At its core, the game is a tactical turn-based combat game, pitting your warband against another on a map which represents a location in the city. Once you have chosen your warband, you can currently only enter a skirmish battle, either against a player across online multiplayer or against a computer AI. There are currently 4 maps to choose from, 2 of which are procedurally generated and 2 of which are unique maps, which usually have a landmark from the city in, like the Temple of Sigmar map. Each map has a different deployments available, which will affect how your units are placed at the start of the match. There are several to choose from, which you can have each warband start at the opposite ends, for example, or you can have ambushes. My personal favourite is the one where essentially both sides are deployed in combat, one-on-one with each other, and it's up to you to see if you can survive that kind of onslaught at the very beginning. The turn system works from an initiative ladder. Instead of having one team take a turn and then the other team take a turn, each unit on the field on both teams have initiative scores, which depending on a variety of factors such as equipment, attributes and so forth. The higher the initiative score, the higher up the ladder that unit will be, and as such the sooner you can use them. I like the idea of the turn system, as it requires you to think very tactically, but also gives you the opportunity to adapt to enemy movements mid-battle. One main issue at the moment with the turn system is the amount of time each turn takes, particularly if the ladder ends up having a couple of or more of enemies units in a row. You can end up sitting there doing nothing for a good amount of time, which does get a little frustrating. Battles overall are particularly slow paced, which I don't necessarily mind, but I think the developers need to find a way to shave some time off, not only to avoid players becoming bored, but it also stops players leaving mid-battle. Each unit has a number of strategy points and offense points. Strategy points are used for movement, interacting with objects, and they are required for some fighting skills, including reloading a bow. Offense points are all about combat. They are used for basic attacks, spells, and most combat abilities. First, let's focus on movement. Movement is pretty straightforward. You have a movement circle around your character that you can move within without using any strategy points. Once you move outside that circle, you use one SP and then another circle appears, and so on and so forth until you run out of SP. Should you not like the movement choice you made, you can simply run back the way you came into your previous circles, and the SP that you used will be refunded, which is a really good thing, I thought. You can also use SP to do things like climb and jump. These actions, however, require a success roll based on the character's stats. Failure will result in the unit falling on its arse and taking fall damage. Similar to movement, to enter combat with an enemy, you must enter the red circle surrounding them. While it is a circle, I have noticed that you can only surround an enemy with 4 units, one on each side. Upon entering the circle, you'll have a new set of actions available, including a basic attack, any skills that your unit has, plus the disengage and flee actions. Each action will take up 1 or more OP, and the amount of OP required can depend on the weapons and the type of unit. The game, as you would imagine, works from a rule set, so every time you attack an enemy, there's a miss chance, a critical damage chance, a parry chance, and if they have a shield, and a dodge chance. There are also stances. Units can enter stances both in and out of combat. Depending on what equipment they have in combat, units can enter parry or the dodge stance. Parry increases the chance to block an attack, and dodge stance increases the chance to avoid the attack. Out of combat, you can currently use ambush for melee and Overwatch for ranged. Overwatch works similar to other tactical games, that if an enemy moves into your sight, your ranged unit will then fire. Ambush works similar into Overwatch for melee units, however the main difference is that when the enemy comes into the line of sight, they will run and attack the enemy, thus entering the combat ring, so they will be fully pledged into combat. It should be noted that many combat skills and weapon modifiers are not currently fully implemented in the game, so you may see some stats on some armor and weapons that just won't be taken into effect in actual combat currently. While everything from movement to attacking takes place in third person in the game, you also have the strategy overlook view, which you can essentially enter anytime you wish during battle. This can help you get an overall view of the map. You can see your unit positions and known enemy positions. Everything works from line of sight, so if you can't see the enemy yet, they won't show up on the map. While the strategy view is basic currently, I certainly would like to see it improved upon, and possibly including the addition of the ability to move your units in that mode. That would be quite fun. The last major mechanic of combat is morale. Each team has a morale bar located at the top left of the screen, and every time you kill or critical hit an enemy, their morale bar will deplete, and vice versa. As a team's morale bar drops, they essentially will start to encounter a route check that will, should they fail, the enemy team will be the victors. It means that should your team face a stronger team, you should play tactically and ambush their key units, like their leader unit, their impressive unit. Take those down to deplete the bar faster, and you'll be able to claim victory because the enemy will rout. Currently in early access, there is only team deathmatch mode. So essentially you have skirmish and the tutorials to play, and that's it. The tutorials themselves are worth playing as they show off some of the features that are not currently implemented in the early access version, plus you get to play as Chaos Forces, which are yet to be implemented. Level design thus far is pretty damn good. Levels are vertically designed so that you can go into any of the upper levels of buildings with your archers and shoot from ledges and windows. It makes the whole thing more tactical and more fun to play. Maps are fairly sized and they have a good flow to them. Each level kind of has several ways to proceed to your opponent, so you could split your forces up, attack, set up ambushes. It's all very well designed in the level design, and I have to give it credit so far for that. It's certainly given that in any early access game you're going to come across game crashes, bugs and graphical errors. I, however, was pretty impressed with Mordheim's graphics and its detail, in particular the character models themselves. Each character was sharp and full of detail, and it was very nice to see that kind of detail so early on. I do actually remain relatively impressed with the graphics of the game overall. It has a nice style and aesthetic to it that really does fit the Warhammer Fantasy universe. So let's talk about the future content and what's going to come in further phases in early access. In terms of warband management, there's going to be customization of all kinds, including gaining levels, changing attributes, the proper implementation of skills, more items and aesthetic customization. Changeable rosters are also going to be a thing, with the ability to hire new units and do item enchantments. In my opinion, in terms of warbands, it's certainly a case of the more customization you put in there, the better, even down to customizing the names of characters. Personalizing your team will not only help with having something to do in between battles, but it actually does make me care about my soldiers more, and losing one hurts that little bit extra when you've put all that time into customizing them. Gameplay additions will include new rogue monsters in battles that will attack both teams, and new gameplay modes. The game would do well to have as many fully fleshed out game modes as possible, particularly for the multiplayer, as it stops it from getting stale. New maps will also be on their way, including 6 unique and 6 procedural, totaling 12 new maps. The game will also feature permadeath and injuries, which is something that I personally enjoy in games, and I like the idea that should I make a mistake and get one of my units killed, they won't be coming back. It does really add a certain amount of tension to the game, especially when you spend lots of time customizing them and then work so hard to improve them, learn skills and such, and then losing them really does get to you. Overall, the current early access build is pretty solid even with its bugs. The game holds a great amount of potential, and I can certainly see it becoming one of the best Warhammer Fantasy games that I have seen in a long time. My biggest gripe with it in the current version is just the sheer amount of time that turns take, and thus the time of each battle. If you're looking for something that's going to be a quick 10-minute run, then you might as well just look elsewhere. I literally had matches that lasted 45 minutes plus. In terms of monetary value, while the game is still very incomplete, you can rack up the hours in multiplayer. In my opinion, if you're a Warhammer Fantasy fan, I would certainly recommend it thus far if you're looking for an early access game to play. The game has a lot of potential, and while the game is relatively fun for right now, there is still time for things to go wrong. But that being said, it is a very strong start from Rogue Factor, and should the full release deliver a good product that I hope that it will be, then I can see it becoming a very popular game. That is Mordheim City of the Damned early access version. Thank you for joining me for this early access examination. Do like, subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.